Hey everyone, welcome back to FT News. I'm Myra. So I checked out the first episodes of Criminal Minds Season 19, and I honestly have mixed feelings about this season because in some ways the show feels refreshed again. But in other ways it still refuses to let go of the exact same storyline that has been dragging on forever. And that's basically the biggest problem with this new era of Criminal Minds. The show keeps teasing that it wants to evolve, move forward, and become darker and more modern, but then somehow everything always circles back to Elias Voit again. Now don't get me wrong, Zach Gilford is still fantastic in this role. That's not the issue. The issue is that this character has completely taken over the show for way too long now. At this point, Voit has become the center of almost everything in the Evolution era, and honestly, it's starting to feel repetitive no matter how good the actor is. Season 19 continues that trend again, but this time the show at least tries to approach him differently. Instead of the terrifying mastermind version from earlier seasons, now we get a more broken and remorseful version of Voit who is still connected to the BU in weird ways. And while some of those scenes are genuinely interesting, there's still this feeling that the writers don't fully know how to move beyond him. At the same time though, I will say this season immediately feels more focused than Season 18. The pacing is tighter, the tone feels darker again, and the cases themselves are more interesting this time. The copycat storyline especially has a lot of potential because it finally shows the long-term consequences of the Sicarius network instead of just treating Voit like the only important killer in the universe. That part actually works. The idea that there are still people inspired by him makes sense and feels much more realistic than endlessly recycling the same direct confrontation between Voit and the BU every season. What surprised me most though is that Criminal Minds finally seems to understand how to use modern technology properly inside the story. Earlier Evolution seasons sometimes felt awkward whenever they tried to sound modern. Some dialogue honestly felt like middle-aged writers reading internet slang for the first time. But Season 19 feels way more natural about it. Instead of forcing random trendy references, the show now focuses more on true crime obsession, online communities, digital manipulation, AI, copycat culture, and how killers become celebrities online. That stuff actually fits Criminal Minds perfectly. And honestly, some of the creepiest moments in these new episodes come from how realistic the online behavior feels now. The BU itself also feels stronger emotionally this season. Rossi still carries a lot of trauma from everything involving Voit, and Joe Mantegna continues to make the character feel emotionally exhausted in a believable way. Prentiss feels more grounded again too, and JJ's grief still quietly hangs over several scenes after everything that happened earlier. But the biggest surprise for me was Luke Alvez. This might finally be one of the first times in years where the show genuinely gives him meaningful material instead of just making him feel like background support. Adam Rodriguez honestly gets some really strong scenes this season. And that's another reason why it becomes frustrating that the show spends so much time circling back to Voit because there are actually several BU members here who deserve more focus. The biggest weakness of Season 19 right now is still balance. Sometimes the show suddenly becomes emotionally serious and dark, then immediately cuts to weird editing choices, dramatic music covers, or scenes that completely interrupt the tension. The tonal inconsistency is still there. Some emotional moments hit hard, while others feel overproduced. And even though the cast is strong, not every character gets enough attention because the show keeps juggling too many ongoing storylines at once. But overall, I still think Season 19 feels like an improvement over Season 18 so far. It finally feels like Criminal Minds is slowly understanding what this reboot era should actually be. Not just another copy of old Criminal Minds, but also not some forced modern version trying too hard to sound current. The best moments happen when the show combines psychological horror with modern internet culture in believable ways. That's where the Evolution era finally feels unique. The biggest question now is whether the writers will finally move beyond Voit completely after this season or keep stretching his storyline forever. Because Criminal Minds absolutely still has potential left. The BU cast is still strong, the darker tone works, and the show still knows how to create creepy situations when it wants to. But eventually, the series has to trust itself enough to create new iconic villains instead of staying trapped in the same cycle. Overall, Criminal Minds Season 19 starts stronger than expected, feels darker and more focused again, and finally uses its modern setting in smarter ways. But the show still hasn't completely escaped the shadow of the Sicarius storyline. And whether this season truly succeeds will depend on whether Criminal Minds is finally brave enough to move forward. Thank you for watching this video, sending you lots of love, and I'll see you in the next one.